One more time. Why do underdogs win? Or at least, why do they win more often than they should? So I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the city known probably more than any other city in the world for its embrace of underdogs. By the way, I need to apologize for my voice. I've been fighting a cold for like 3 weeks now, and I decided finally that, you know what, if the subject is underdogs, why don't I record in the middle of that fight? I mean, when you think about Philadelphia, our most celebrated sports hero is a fictional character who loses the heavyweight championship of the world. That's right, I'm talking about Rocky Balboa. I'm talking about the Italian Stallion. Rocky is the story of a bum fighter who gets picked by happenstance to lose to the heavyweight champion of the world. But midway through the movie, we get the real point of Rocky. I mean, the big point is that it's a love story between Rocky and Adrian. But midway through the movie, Rocky tells Adrian he doesn't want to win. Rocky tells Adrian he wants to go the distance. He wants to prove to the world that he's not a bum. And if he wins, great. And if he loses, great. But if he goes the distance, that's what will prove all the critics wrong. That's what will prove that he's not a bum. And it turns out, I don't know if Sylvester Stallone knew something about the human psyche that psychologists are only now finding, but it turns out that that's actually in line with a lot of research on underdogs. Relatively recently, there's been a wealth of attempts to study that underdog narrative and its motivating effect. Most of the studies have been led by a man named Samir Nurmohamed from the University of Pennsylvania. And what Nurmohamed's done is devised in several different scenarios, situations where people adopt an underdog narrative. And what he's found is consistently those people are more motivated to perform than control groups. In one study, he looked at job seekers, people who had been unexpectedly looking for work. And Nurmohamed encouraged one group of participants to see themselves as underdogs, as underrated, as the companies that rejected them not understanding the true value they could provide to the organization. And to a control group, he just asked them questions about their past work history and what have you. And then he followed up with them a few weeks later, and the group that had seen themselves as underdogs were much more likely to be getting interviews and much more likely to be getting job offers than the control group. Something about the desire to prove past rejections wrong motivated and inspired this group far more than the control. In another study, Nurmohamed took participants through a negotiation process, but before he did that, he primed them into 3 groups. One group was told that they, based on their education levels and their past performance on some pre-tests, were expected to do really well in the negotiation before they met their partner. One group was told that they got a pretty good shot, fair. And another group was told that they were the underdogs, that they weren't expecting much from them, that they were probably going to lose in the negotiation they were heading into. And afterwards, when everybody went through rounds of negotiations, what Nurmohamed and his team found is that the underdog group, the group that was told you're probably not going to perform well, that group came up not only more often with winning solutions, not only won the negotiation more often, but came up with more creative solutions than did prior teams. Now, when I think about this, I don't actually think about Rocky. I think about another Philadelphia-based underdog. I think about the Philadelphia Eagles and their Super Bowl victory over the football dynasty that is the Patriots. An underrated head coach that was leading a team full of injuries. He had one of the best quarterbacks in the league, injured midway through the season, and so he had to rely on a second-string quarterback who had actually retired once from football, but who surprisingly rose to lead and bond that team so that they were one of the most unified and motivated teams that we've ever seen. And as a result, they adopted plays that were far more creative, like Samir Nurmohamed's negotiation partners, and ended up definitively beating the consensus best team in football. Yeah, we're a little obsessed with underdogs where I come from. And it doesn't just stop in the lab or on the playing field. It turns out that underdog narrative has a huge effect on how we see ourselves, our lives, and our job satisfaction. One study from my friend Thomas Roulet looked at French full-time employees who were satisfied or dissatisfied with their job. And what he found, based on a national survey, over 3,000 people surveyed, is that one of the big factors in being satisfied with their job was whether or not the public had a positive opinion of the company that you worked for. I mean, the first part is obvious, right? If the public has a positive opinion of the company that you work for, then you're more likely to be satisfied. We all want to work for admirable companies, right? But where it got interesting was if the public, the broader public, had a negative opinion of your company. Then, whether or not you were satisfied in your job depended on one crucial thing: whether or not you agreed with their criticism. See, if you worked for a company that was seen as less than admirable and you agreed with it, then yeah, you're obviously going to be dissatisfied. But if you worked for a company that was seen as less than admirable and you believe the public was wrong, you believe there's something about the industry they don't understand, or they're not seeing the whole truth, if you believed the haters and the critics were wrong, then you were more likely to be satisfied with your job even than with the admirable companies. Something about that desire to prove haters wrong not only leads to greater motivation and innovation, but leads to greater satisfaction with the organization that you are working for. Now, I've looked at motivating power that organizations can have over individuals in a lot of different ways. And one of the things that you know is that I'm a huge fan of answering the question, what are we fighting for, as a way to motivate employees. And it turns out that underdog fights, the idea that what we're fighting for is to prove the haters wrong, is one of the most potent ways that you can motivate your team. And there are so many examples throughout history of leaders embracing that underdog status. Even in business history, of leaders saying, you know what, the establishment, the industry doesn't actually believe that we're a significant player. Our competitors don't actually believe that we're significant, and we're going to show them wrong. I mean, consider one example that's not only famous, but happens to be how I watch Rocky movies. Netflix. If you're older than 30, you probably remember that Netflix started not as an Academy Award and Emmy Award winning streaming movie and television service, but as a DVD by mail service. The company was actually started because founder Reed Hastings was tired of late fees from established players like Blockbuster for not returning his DVDs on time. Netflix began courting Blockbuster as a potential savior for the company. The idea was that if they could sell themselves to Blockbuster, they could start a new service inside of Blockbuster, the DVD by mail service, associated with that, Blockbuster brand. And Blockbuster ignored them for a pretty long time. And then one day, they reached out and said, you know what, you can meet with our CFO. We scheduled a meeting for you tomorrow at 11:30 in the morning. Reed Hastings and the senior leadership team took whatever offer they could get. They chartered a plane that left at 5 in the morning from California to get to that meeting in Dallas with Blockbuster on time. And in that meeting, they presented their case for why Netflix was a beautiful acquisition. And then they listened as the CFO of Blockbuster arrogantly explained to them how every .com company, every tech company was about to implode, how the internet was overrated, and how Blockbuster brick and mortar retail was going to survive for a very long time. But when it came down to purchasing the company, the CFO asked Reed for a number. He said, what would you be willing to sell the company for? Reed Hastings quoted them $50 million. Blockbuster, a company who about a decade later would basically be bankrupt, had the opportunity to purchase Netflix for $50 million and turned it down because they, in their arrogance as the established players, believed that brick and mortar was there forever and that tech companies like Netflix were overrated. I mean, think about how crazy that is, right? Reed Hastings didn't get $50 million, but I'm willing to bet on that plane ride back after that meeting, Reed Hastings realized he got something far more valuable. He got an underdog story. If you can, as a leader, point to how your team has been discounted or underrated, and you can point to how they're wrong, then you can tap into that same motivational force. That is how underdogs win, or at least why they win more often than they should. And as a leader, if you can point to an underdog fight for your team, then you can enhance your chances of winning far bigger than they expected, even of themselves.
Hey, thanks so much for watching this episode. If you enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe to the channel because we post episodes like this as often as we can. And if you really enjoyed it and you want to go deeper, then check out our totally free course, 3 Days to a More Motivated and Aligned Team. You can sign up for it at davidburkus.com/3days. We'll see you there.